Ever feel like you're constantly doing something in your head? Worrying, planning, stressing, but somehow you're not actually getting anywhere. It can feel like you're being productive, right? Like your brain is working overtime to solve problems. But what if that very feeling of productive worrying is actually one of the biggest drains on your energy, keeping you stuck instead of moving you forward? Hi, I'm Quinn, and having personally navigated debilitating anxiety and depression, while also juggling raising 5 children, providing for my family, and pursuing my creative projects, I'm here to share what I've learned about thriving, not just surviving. You see, one of the biggest insights I've gained is that anxiety, while it can feel like you're tackling things, often doesn't offer real solutions and usually just leaves you feeling depleted. I am so passionate about helping people get out of their own way so they can start living more and more the life they've been dreaming of. I believe we all have beautiful, meaningful desires within us, but all too often we don't act on them because we get stuck in cycles of worry and fear. Today we're going to take a look at this subtle trap, and we're going to uncover ways to free up more of your energy, especially so you can start taking action on those really precious dreams and goals. And as a little extra support on your journey, I'll be sharing a sneak peek of my upcoming zine, The World is Full of Stories, that's coming out soon. It's going to offer lots of tools and insights to navigate your inner world. One of my favorite quotes is by Howard Thurman. Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and go do it. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. Our dreams and creativity are major forces that bring us more and more alive. However, all too often we sabotage our creativity and dreams by telling ourselves little white lies like we'll do what we really, really want to do when our lives are less crazy or when life calms down. But oftentimes what's actually holding us back is stories about our limitations that may or may not be true. Time just keeps going by and your beautiful dreams and goals just stay waiting in the wings. Meanwhile, this can create even more discontent and disharmony in your everyday life. Because if you were actually taking time towards your creative project or goal, even if it was just only 15 minutes a day, you'd start to come more alive. It would infuse your life with so much more energy, enthusiasm, joy, meaning, and contentment. So if this video found you, take it as a sign to stop waiting and start doing what you really want to do with your life. A key concept to understand when working with our brains and getting them out of the way is that anxiety can feel productive. When you aren't sure if you can actually do something about a situation that you're concerned about or how something in life is going, we can try to fix it all in our heads. Our brains can go into hyperdrive, trying to solve everything. This is such a sneaky trap because even if you could spend a whole day, a whole week, months even, silently worrying in your head about something, it can seem like you're seriously evaluating everything and actually trying to figure things out. Worrying in that sense can feel like a rational thing to do. For example, maybe you're worried about not having enough money. Your brain will play all sorts of tricks to try to help you to solve the stressor of not enough money. First, it will help you think of all sorts of scary worst-case scenarios about how bad and painful life will be if you don't solve this. It's kind of like a terrible motivational speech. Our brains are actually trying to motivate us with fear. But this typically isn't very helpful at all because if we're already not clear about how to resolve something in our life, especially if it's something we're kind of afraid of not resolving, then if we add more fear to it, then it doesn't motivate us, it actually paralyzes us. So then we use our brains to try to think through all sorts of scenarios, like running through a bunch of simulations of what we might possibly do and how we could possibly resolve the situation. But when those scenarios don't seem likely to work or they even spark more fear, it just keeps us further and further in an anxiety spiral. But here's the crazy thing. Real, lasting solutions do not come from fear. They come instead from creativity and wisdom. They can also even come seemingly out of nowhere as a spark of inspiration, like a bolt of lightning. So what if solutions are actually more likely to come to you when you're calm and curious? What if the worry is actually making it harder for you to hear the real solutions? Another sneaky aspect about worrying is that it can feel like caring. For some crazy reason, the world got this idea that we worry about those that we love as a way of showing that we care about them. It's like one of the top jobs of a parent to worry. Like, are you even a good parent if you're not worried about your kid? I would argue yes, but let's explore that further. For example, maybe one of your teenagers didn't make it home by curfew and hasn't checked in. Once they finally walked through the door, you'd probably find yourself saying, "Where were you? I was so worried." What we're really trying to say is that we were concerned about their safety and that we really care about them. But this social construct often does lead us to sitting and stewing and worrying for hours about all the terrible things that might happen to this teenager while they're out and we don't know where they are. By the time they actually get home, we might have imagined the absolute worst possible scenarios. Now, it's true that we live in a world where tragic and terrible things can happen, even by surprise. But even in those scenarios, a calm, level head would help you to navigate everything far better than worry, overwhelm, stress, anxiety, and fear ever could. Anxiety and worry just deplete us. They do not offer us anything in return. But here's the really tricky thing with mistaking worrying for care. Usually when we worry ourselves to death over people, it isn't actually the really caring thing to do. Instead, it just depletes us and can distract us from doing the actual caring thing. Maybe you can relate, but have you ever been really upset by something and then found yourself actually comforting someone else because they are so upset about what's happening to you that you have to set your feelings aside for a minute to try to calm them down first? It doesn't feel good. It can even feel like the other person is making your pain all about themselves. That can quickly add more burden to an already difficult situation. This leads us to the next crucial aspect to understand about anxiety. Often we think negative feelings are telling us that something bad is going to happen. This freaks us out and can keep us stuck in an anxiety spiral. We even can trust the "I had a bad feeling about it" vibes more than any positive evidence to the contrary. I see this scenario showing up a lot because I don't think we like to be surprised by pain or even failure. So we're kind of trying to prepare ourselves for the worst case scenario because in a crazy way, we think it is going to soften the blow and it's not going to hurt as much if that worst case scenario actually happens. But let's talk about how that usually can play out. For example, maybe you have to give a presentation at your job in front of the executive team. Worry might start to creep in, which makes you feel bad and worry more. You imagine all sorts of embarrassing and potentially job-destroying ways that your presentation could go wrong. As a result, the morning of your presentation, you just have a bad feeling about it. And then you end up not doing your best during the actual presentation. Your boss may even come to you after and say that you guys need to talk about improving your performance. Instead of identifying the role that anxiety and worry had to play in blowing this presentation out of proportion and psyching yourself out of doing a good job, it's all too easy to say, "Oh, well, I just had a really bad feeling about it." As if our intuition was telling us the whole time that the presentation was just meant to be a disaster. Anxiety and worry are some of the most expensive and least productive ways to use our energy. Imagine your daily energy as a finite budget. You have a certain amount to invest in things that will support you and will bring you joy. However, anxiety and worry are like a hidden drain, constantly siphoning off those precious resources. Instead of investing that energy in productive work, your creative projects, or meaningful connections with people you care about, things you really need, you're essentially wasting it on unproductive mental loops. The junk food that offers no lasting value and leaves you feeling depleted for what truly matters. Anxiety depletes energy without producing helpful outcomes. It holds us back from creating, living fully, and appreciating all the goodness that might be right here in front of us right now. When you break anxiety and worry down, you see that it's made up of a lot of stories, albeit very scary stories. Our internal narratives and stories are key to our well-being or sabotaging the life we want to lead. Over the years, I've gotten a lot of practice at managing and working with anxiety. Now, when I start to worry, I don't slip into that anxiety anxiety spiral quite so easily, and I can usually get myself out of it pretty quickly. Instead, I question the stories I'm telling myself in my head. I think a big struggle in the past was feeling like anxiety was a feeling or a state of mind, and not fully recognizing that even if I wasn't conscious of them, there were always stories underneath the feelings of worry and anxiety. It's been absolutely life-changing to question these stories. Honestly, my brain was full of so many negative beliefs and disempowering stories. At times it felt really difficult and impossible to ever change them. But in a lot of scenarios, I found that just even questioning the stories was enough. Now I've gotten really determined to not let my inner narratives limit me anymore. My mindset now is if what I'm working on is meant to fail, or if I am meant to fail, then so be it. But I refuse to let the reason for whatever I'm working on fail be a story in my head that was holding me back. Basically, this means that I will continue to question the stories that come up in my head, no matter how scary or how real they might seem, and will instead be really intentional and proactive about the stories I allow to limit myself and my life. I'm being much more intentional about what I choose to believe about who I am, who others are, and what life is all about. For example, it's not easy or comfortable to make these YouTube videos. It's genuinely a stretch for me. But it's been a dream of mine for a long time to find more of my community and to share some of the things that I've learned over the years. Like what I'm doing with you here today. For so many weeks in getting my YouTube videos going, anxiety and worry would show up every time. Whether it was before I was starting to film, as I was researching, editing, or preparing the actual videos to share online. But instead of letting those worries and anxieties paralyze me like I have done in the past, and keeping myself playing really small, I'm questioning the limiting stories and beliefs that are underneath the fear and anxiety. I'm asking myself if those stories are true. Stories like, no one cares what you have to say, or what if this doesn't help anyone, or you should have done this years ago and now you've missed your chance. As Byron Katie says, if you're gonna build your life around a thought, you better make sure it's true. As I question these stories, I don't see indicators that they are actually true. No matter how bad they make me feel and how much they make me want to go and hide and never try again. Instead, I'm finding incredible liberation and freedom as I keep showing up and keep questioning those worries and anxieties and negative stories and then leave them behind. Each week, it also gets easier and easier to show up and share what's in my heart in these videos. I refuse to let a story in my head stop me anymore. Life can stop me, but I don't want to get in my own way anymore. So let's talk about some quick tips for how to look at those scary internal stories so you can better understand and conquer any anxiety or worries that are showing up. One of the best ways to get out of your anxiety spiral is to write it down. Get it out of your head and onto paper. There's something so powerful about how this can immediately help you get out of the big feeling and see things more objectively, like from a bird's eye view. When we just keep stewing and spinning those worries in our minds, it can keep them stuck, like getting an annoying song stuck in your head. But when we externalize our worries, it makes them less overwhelming and easier to identify, and just easier to see what the heck is going on inside our mind anyways. When we don't take a minute to ask ourselves why we're feeling anxious, or what the story is that we're telling ourselves that's bringing up this anxiety and fear, it's like having a tea kettle or a fire alarm going off in the background of our lives. Anxiety can be incredibly distracting, and it can trigger your fight, flight, or freeze response, which doesn't actually help us to take consistent action towards the life that we want to lead. Instead, it keeps us stuck in survival mode. I also like to ask myself specific questions to get rid of the anxiety or to stop it from spiraling any further. A great question to ask yourself is, can I do anything about this right now? Can you fix or resolve whatever you're feeling worried or anxious about right now? This encourages either immediate action or shifting your perspective towards acceptance. When I'm feeling really stuck here, I like making a simple T-chart on a piece of paper. I draw a line down the center of the middle of the page, and on the left-hand side, I write my part, and on the right-hand side, I write God's part, or the universe's part. Then I do a brain dump of all the possible things that I might be able to do that are within my control to resolve the scenario on the left-hand side of the column. On the right-hand side, I write down all the things that are outside of my control that I really hope will work out and that I hope that the universe is looking out for me with. This might help me see that if I'm stressed or worried about my health, I can take more walks each day and I can cut out foods that are triggering. But I can't control whether or not I might someday get cancer. It helps me to accept the things that I can't control and appreciate and focus on what I can. A few more of my favorite questions to ask myself are, what would I do if this was solved right now? And what would my life look like if this stressor was just gone? Typically, this leads me down a thought path that looks a little something like this. It starts with, I'm so stressed about politics. And then asking myself, well, what would I do differently if this political stressor was gone? What would my life look like? It reminds me that I'd still probably be going about my everyday life pretty similarly to how I am now, but I probably wouldn't be stressing as much and I might be even enjoying my life more. I wouldn't be listening to the news as much. I'd be spending more time with my loved ones. I'd be more naturally appreciating just how good so many things in my life are and how much there is to be grateful for. And then this would lead me to ask myself, well, why can't I do that now? Do I really need to wait for this stressor to be gone to start living like that? Usually my answer leads me to stop worrying, stop scrolling social media, or trying to numb out from any anxiety. And instead, it gets me taking positive, healthy action towards the life I want to lead and the goals that I have for myself. The more we can shift to curiosity when worries and anxiety show up, the better. All too often, it's purely our human tendency to fear the unknown that can spark anxiety also. However, the line between the feelings of anxiety and excitement are pretty thin. In some instances, we can even confuse excitement for anxiety. A fun way to think about this is to question, what if life is more like an amusement park and less like a game of survival? In an amusement park, you might choose to go on a roller coaster purely because it will freak you out. It can be fun. I love trying to think of life more like this. It helps me try to see each day as more of an adventure and helps me access a lot more wisdom rather than reactivity and stress when dealing with my everyday life. Essentially, it just means I want to save worrying and big anxiety and paralyzing feelings for the really big, scary, stressful stuff if I can help it, rather than spending my life feeling worried and letting that hold me back. One of my favorite stress-relieving mantras is, I'll figure it out when I get there. It reminds me that I'm capable and that thus far in my life, I've been able to figure out things as they've come every time. So overall, I'm hoping that you walk away from this video feeling that anxiety is really unproductive and not helpful, and that recognizing that can actually support us in stopping the anxiety spiral in the first place. Worrying doesn't mean you care more, and it can actually distract you from showing up in truly caring ways. The more you question and get clear about the scary story you're telling yourself that's leading to the worry and anxiety, the more you'll help set yourself free. Learning skills to manage those worries when they arise, like what we've been talking about, can help us better understand our thoughts and patterns so that we can take more and more helpful, productive action towards living more of a life that we love. I'm in the middle of making a really juicy zine right now called The World is Full of Stories. It's going to be a really supportive resource for working with inner narratives and managing our emotions. If you're curious about it or want to hear more, be sure to subscribe so you can check out those weekly updates about it. I'm hoping this zine can be a really powerful resource to you on your journey. And if you found some great strategies to work with your own worries and anxiety, please share them below so we can all benefit.